So some friends just got back from an interfaith delegation to Palestine, and Beth Brockman, one of the people who went, she's from Durham, and she sent this song to us. And I don't know the whole thing, I don't know it well, but we'll give it a try. Cry heart, but do not break. Your love is needed for the days to come. Cry hope, and then cry freedom. Cry justice, till the work be done. Till the work be done. And there is a, we can do this again if y'all can participate by singing just one phrase on one note. Cry heart, but do not break. 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 Your love is needed for the days to come. Cry hope, and then cry freedom. Cry justice, till the work be done.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not going to sing anything, don't worry. Let me see. Thank you for joining us tonight. Once again, the bathrooms are over there. My name is Joe Cicero, and I'm honored to be one of the on the board of directors for North Carolina Peace Action. I'm also deputy director of major gifts for Peace Action National, the national organization. So I work full-time for the Peace Act of the national organization, and then I moved here to North Carolina 2.5 years ago, and so now I've been very active with North Carolina Peace Action. When I started work at Peace Action in Los Angeles 2010, we hired young people to canvass, go out, knock on doors, and stand out in the streets, recruit new members. I wanted them to learn about Peace Action. And so what I did was I put together a history. And it's in 5-year increments. Like I said, starting off with World War II. You know, people know about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but they may not realize that we bombed 67 cities in Japan before we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We killed about 1 million people, approximately, in Japan. And, you know, it's terrible that they attacked Pearl Harbor, but, you know, we responded in a big way. So I put together these posters so that the canvassers could be in the hallway, could learn about peace activism. So it's a timeline of things that we've been involved in. And the founder of Peace Action, founder of SANE, the Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy, was Norman Cousins. And so he was the editor of Saturday Review, and he came out with a strong editorial and book right after the dropping of the bomb. So he was one of the first Americans to speak out against using atomic weapons. The board worked very hard on this event. And so you've already met some of the board members tonight checking in. But let me introduce some of the board members. So when I call you, please stand or wave or both. Joe Burton is our treasurer. There he is. Ann Cassebaum is, where is Ann? There she is, right over there. And she's very involved with our intern program, and we're moving right along. Do we have interns here tonight, Ann? sorry? Not yet? Okay. Board member Sandy Irving, who worked with Habibi to set this food out. There you go, Sandy. There you go, right over there. And Rachel Bliss, who's not with us tonight. And our, I didn't forget you, Scott, on our staff, we have Assistant Director George Friday. Our newest board member has been a huge help with recreating our website, our database of members. And he's the guy behind this camera over here, Scott Oates. You, ladies and gentlemen, a very small, special group. Only about 17% of the American people follow foreign policy, read about it in the newspaper. 17%. So if we say that 7% are pro-war, 7 is anti-war, and 3% undecided, then you are part of that 7% that follows foreign policy and are here speaking out against it. So a very special group. We need more. We're here tonight to celebrate peace activism and honor this year's Peacemakers. We're here tonight because we believe in peace and diplomacy instead of the blunt instrument of war. We are honored to have some of our past Peacemaker Award winners and speakers here tonight. So when I call your name, if you would please stand. Let's see. I'm going to go from the bottom up. In 2015, the Peace Media Group. Do we have any representatives? Okay, there we go. Vicky, why don't you stand up? Just wave your hand. There we go.
I am standing up.
In 2016, Lynn and Steve Newman, directors of Quaker House. Are they here? Well, let's give them a hand anyway. Somebody you've never heard of, 2017, Patrick O'Neill and Mary Ryder in 2017. Where's Patrick? There he is. In 2018, we gave the award to Tuesdays with Tillis. I don't know if we have any key members here.
It's no longer Tillis because he never showed up.
It's called Democracy Out Loud?
That's right.
I like that. That's great. Okay, there you go. Well, you get recognition. There you go. In 2019, Roger Ehrlich. Roger, can you stand up? Raise your hand. Okay, great. 2020, Wes Hare and Ruth Zalf. In 2021, Reject Raytheon. Anybody from here? Well, let's give them a hand anyway. In 2022, Dave and Debbie Bizak. Last year, we had Matthew Hogue. I'm not sure if he made it tonight. But anyway, let's give Matthew a hand. And our speaker last year, somebody you've never heard of either, Ray McGovern. Did I leave anybody out? I'm asking everybody to double check my stuff. Okay. And that's only back to 2015. That's all we have time to write this minute. Many of us here tonight started our anti-war activism in high school or college when America was bombing North and South Korea, Cambodia, Laos, and Laos. The U.S. dropped more than 7.5 million tons of bombs on Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, which is double the amount that was dropped in World War II on Europe and Asia. So 7.5 is millions. That would be 7.5 megatons, right? And that was half the size of the bomb that we dropped in Hiroshima, which was 15 megatons. So that in World War II, killing about 1 million people. It remains, I'm sorry, in the Vietnam War, and Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, we killed about 1 million people. Remains the largest aerial bombardment in human history. You know, I'm new to North Carolina. I'm only here 2.5 years. My first religious protest against authority was my senior year in high school, 1974. I went to Catholic high school in New Jersey. And 1 week from tonight, I'll be getting together for my 50th class reunion. And I can't believe I'm this old. No, I didn't exactly graduate from Catholic high school. Mars Catholic. Oh, and is our Tar Heel reporter here? All right. So it's Mars, M-O-R-R-I-S, Catholic high school in 74. So I was expelled 6 weeks before graduation. Actually, I helped get 8 of us expelled. And so, like many Catholic schools, the convent was located right next to the high school. The night before Easter, my parents were out of town, so naturally we had a party at my house. I waited until everybody was drunk, and I announced that we're going to go streaking at the convent at midnight. About 16 of us drunk seniors drove 10 miles to the high school and convent. And standing on the front porch of the convent when 2 police cars, with their red lights whirling, pulled into the grounds. Half the streakers ran to the woods, and 8 of us were arrested and expelled. You know, a bunch of us got into one car, and they were saying, take off, and I was saying, no, you know, this is it. So I got out of the car in my underwear and went over to the police car and said, good evening, officer, can I help you? So just to put that in perspective of like drunk driving laws, this policeman told me to get back, and a car full of drunk guys, 6 guys in a car, half naked. He says, well, get back in that car and follow us down to the police station. They didn't have enough room to drive us down. Now, since I was in a Catholic high school, we apologized and asked for forgiveness. And we asked the nuns to turn the other cheek. And, you know, do the Christian thing, but the answer was no. So it's interesting. As a matter of fact, I had to sign a contract saying that I would never set foot on those grounds again as long as I lived. And so it's interesting that I'm going to be up at the high school next week. One of the guys in my class became a priest. He's going to be saying Mass at the high school. And then the Alumni Association of Mars Catholic is going to show us around, you know, and try to get me to donate to Mars Catholic High School. So, but I'd rather support peace activists rather than, you know, my old high school. They needed more. So, went to college in New Mexico, the home of the first atomic bomb. United States, Russia, and China target all of our major cities. New Jersey, where I lived, grew up as downwind from Manhattan, which is one, along with Washington, one of the top targets on the list. So for I learned about nuclear war in college at University of New Mexico, 76 or so. And then for the next 25 years, I wondered, you know, if a terrorist action or a nuclear strike hit Manhattan, would it hit New Jersey, and depending on the wind. So when 9/11 happened, I was standing on a hill in New Jersey watching the towers burn, and I got my answer to that question with the wind going out to the ocean. But so when I was 50, I decided to devote, I did work in politics, and when I was in college, I was thinking, okay, I want to do something about nuclear war. So do I join the State Department, or do I become a campaign manager? So with the State Department, luckily I figured out that they don't really have much power, you know, to affect policy. They're like a PR department for the president. So I had became a campaign manager working for people running for Congress, U.S. Senate. Mayor of Chicago actually worked on that race to get Jane Byrne, the first female mayor. When I was 50, I decided to devote the second half of my life to preventing nuclear war. And after the 9/11, after we were in the process of invading Iraq, I didn't see many students involved in the anti-war movement. So I try to picture 2003, 2004. So I went to my local high school, I went to my local county college where I live, New Jersey, and started a peace group there. And then from there, I just continued my activism with peace action and everything. I was interviewed, very honored to be interviewed by the Tar Heel yesterday, for an article about tonight's events. And one of the questions I was asked was, like, what are the benefits of getting this award? And I didn't really have a good answer. I was thinking about it. Peace activists don't get paid much, as we all know. And matter of fact, if the presidents of the large weapons manufacturers, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, Hewlett-Packard, they make on an average of $20 million a year. That money comes from weapon sales. They make a lot of profit to make weapons of mass destruction and mass murder. So it's a very profitable business, and it's very hard to stop, as we know. So, but one of the benefits is that us and Hashem and all the students that are involved will be able to tell your kids and grandkids that you stood up for peace and justice. You put your body on the line when your country and the world need your support. That's one of the benefits of becoming a peacemaker and working in the peace movement. Okay, I'm going to call up Joe Burton, and he has a special presentation that he is going to make.
Thank you, Joe. Earlier this year, it became clear that our website needed work. And the Board of North Carolina Peace Action decided that we needed improvement and make it more attractive for users, make it more user-friendly. So we called on Angie Kirby to do that. She's a professional graphic designer to be our guide in making the needed changes. Over a period of months, she volunteered her time working with the board members, suggesting ideas, providing expertise to get us where we are today. Our new website is easy to navigate, easy for users to find information they need about peace action. Angie has been indispensable. Frankly, I don't know how we could have done without her help. So tonight I wanted to recognize her and give her an award, a gift, I should say. Is Angie still, would you stand up? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Before I call up Ann Cassebaum to make an award to the students, I just want to read you something. With Scott Oates' help setting up ticket sales, people attached different notes to when they bought tickets. And they were, a bunch of notes and congratulations and, we believe in what you're doing. But there's one note that stood out, and she's going to recognize this. The note said, "My deepest gratitude, respect, and love go to the UNC students for justice in Palestine, who showed their unwavering commitment to justice and creating a better world, who put their bodies on the line with great courage. They faced intimidation, threats, harassment, repression, police violence, with dignity to draw attention to our complicity in the horrific and ongoing genocide in Gaza. They were always clear in their aims and always centered Palestinian liberation. I'm proud to have worked with them and honored to know them. And that was sent by Elise Crystal, the student advisor to the Students for Justice in Palestine. Can you stand, Crystal? Thank you. I really thought that you needed it to be said. So what I'd like to do now is introduce Ann Cassebaum, one of our board members, who's going to present our first Peacemaker Award. Okay? To Students for Justice in Palestine, and Hashem Amireh will accept the award on behalf of those organizations.
Joe and I tussled over these introductions. He couldn't resist doing his, and he said, "I'll help elicit applause." And I thought, with this group, you're not going to need to tell him. I think this award goes to a group represented here on the stage and across the nation. Students who have stood up for justice for Palestinians. And we already honor you, we already thank you, and are deeply relieved and grateful you are with us. I will just point out that they deserve particular praise because this action is taken at that time of your life when it opens up with possibilities. And these are bright UNC students. It's really opening up for them. And they took risks. They risked harassment, they risked arrest, they risked their education in some cases, they're suspended. They risked career opportunities and even bodily harm. And they did this for people they don't know, mostly. They did it to speak for the liberation of Palestinians, and in doing that, you speak for all our liberation. They've kept the focus on what our government is doing in Gaza and the Middle East and the West Bank. You all know this is not happening without the U.S. driving it forward. And while that's going on, and they focused on that, they've dealt with other layers of government aimed on taking away their rights and destroying activism against the empire and against militarism. So this is a huge and important movement. Yet they continue. We used to say, oh, without the draft, you won't find students doing this or that. How wrong we were. So we thank you for your work and your ongoing work for divestment, for humanity, for a saner world. And this simply says, for facing arrest and suspension as they protested the genocide in Gaza, but it is for so much more. Thank you. Would be interesting to talk to, but we're not doing that tonight. Hashem Amireh is going to accept the award on their behalf. If If you want to know more about him, just Google his name and Students for Justice in Palestine. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Joe, as well. And I want to extend a thank you to Peace Action, the board, and everyone here who is really standing and helping us with our fight. I think this has been a difficult time for a lot of people, and we've seen a reluctance to expend any sort of capital, whether it's political capital or whatever, from a lot of people around the state to support us. It has been disheartening, so it is wonderful to see folks in this room who are willing to put themselves on the line and say, hey, we don't care about the flack we're going to get, we're going to support these students, and that means a lot to us. So thank you all for that. I appreciate it. I also have a couple of remarks. I have some thank yous I want to extend. We didn't do it. Students for Justice in Palestine is not in a vacuum. There are other student groups that have been helping us. And, you know, in the encampment, it was the Triangle encampment at UNC, but Duke and NC State have been part of this, and they're Students for Justice in Palestine. So I want to put a shout out to them as they are part of the movement. I also want to thank a bunch of different local organizing groups that have supported us in a variety of different ways, whether it's giving us legal counsel, diverting the Sunday rallies to Chapel Hill during the encampment, all sorts of stuff. A couple come to mind. One is Jewish Voice for Peace, Mothers for Ceasefire, Muslim Women for, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and I'm sure a couple of others. There's a couple of personal thank yous that I want to put out, and they go to two wonderful women in that corner. They are Rania and Elise. You know, I know a lot of folks in this room are not unfamiliar with campus activism. I know a lot of folks in this room have done campus activism in their time. And I know that a lot of you know that it's not easy. It's very draining, and members of the community, like our faculty advisor Elise and Rania, have been so supportive of us, always willing to give us a hug with the time we direly need it. So thank you. Just one last remark. The genocide in Palestine is still ongoing. We put ourselves on the line, but it hasn't been enough. And we're doing everything we can, and everyone in this room is doing everything they can. Joe mentioned the number of bombs, the number of tons of bombs that were dropped in the different wars. I looked it up. By the end of April, it's estimated that Israel, in the span of 6 months, has dropped more tons of TNT, the equivalent of more tons of TNT than Dresden, Hamburg, and London bombings combined during World War II. In the span of 6 months, in a tiny strip of land. The scale of destruction that we are seeing in Gaza is unprecedented. And the cognitive dissonance that's existing in this country is unprecedented. And we need to be, the conversation is going, we know there's a lot of people who think, you know, a majority of Americans think that arms sales to Israel should stop, yet our politicians will never listen to us. And I think it's time that things change in this country. And it's just not sustainable. So I want to commend the work that you all do, but I have hope. I think the discourse around Palestine has never been this way. I think the Zionist propaganda has been so entrenched in the discourse, but since 2021, before the genocide began, in the Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem, I think a lot of awareness has been coming about. I think now there's reluctance to talk about it because of the election, because some people who think a genocide is occurring still are not willing to take the political risk that involves, you know, voting for someone who they think would stop the genocide. And I know that's divisive, and I know it's hard, but that is the reality that we live in today, is that some evils are far too evil to go for the lesser of two evils. Again, I'll leave it at that. I think it probably took some more time than I should. So thank you all so much, and thank you to Peace Action again.
Thank you, Hashem. Well, let me see. Tonight is a pretty somber event, as we all know, right? And especially we have a surgeon returning from Gaza, and to tell us an eyewitness account of what he saw. So it's time for some good news about peace activism. So on our national affiliate Peace Action call today, we talked about two things that Peace Action National is working on with all the affiliates. And the two things are to restore funding to UNRWA, the United Nations group that distributes food, medicine, water, everything in Gaza, right? And because the United States cut it off because out of about 30,000 employees in this United Nations group, apparently a handful were part of the October 7th attack, you know, and although Israel, to my knowledge, hasn't given any proof, you know, still the Americans cut off funding to this group. So, and keep in mind that along with Congress approving weapon sales, tons of money. As a matter of fact, I think it was in February or March, they approved $14 billion. But they said, oh, don't worry, one of those billions is going to aid in Gaza. But wait a minute, all the borders are closed in Gaza, you know, and they cut off the water, cut off everything. How's that aid going to get in? How's our $1 billion in aid, you know, going to make its way into Gaza? And you're going to stop funding the organization that distributes the aid in Gaza. So try to imagine that the U.S. government decided that it was going to take all the Social Security checks for Raleigh and put them into a dump truck and make it in cash, I'm sorry. And they were going to dump that pile of cash right in the middle of a park in downtown Raleigh. I don't think that'd be a great way to distribute Social Security checks to senior citizens, you know, in the city. But this is what stopping the infrastructure of humanitarian food distribution, is doing. The other thing, so there's going to be a Restoration Act, and as a matter of fact, I've got some other good news. Is that our Congresswoman from the Durham area, Valerie Foushee, I'm saying that right? We were pushing really hard to get co-sponsors. So the co-sponsors are the people that presents like a bill, like you know, its first day, and if it has one co-sponsor, then you know it gets ignored. But we helped to get 65 co-sponsors to that bill in the House, and Valerie Foushee was one of those co-sponsors. So very happy about that. Now she and the rest of the U.S. senators and the House members, both Democrat and Republican, voted for more money for Israel weapons. And as a matter of fact, some companies, Israel wants to buy $20 billion in weapons from the United States. And that deal, $20 billion, has to be approved by Congress and the President. Now, it was approved, but there's a mechanism in the law that says that you can undo that approval. Okay, it's called a Joint Resolution of Disapproval, JRD, and this very technical term you're going to hear a lot of, you know, over the next over the next 3, 4, 5 months. So we're part of our coalition working on legislation Matter of fact, one member was speaking to Bernie Sanders' office this morning, and Bernie Sanders has already announced at a press conference, gave a speech in the Senate, that he's going to be submitting this joint resolution of disapproval. What day is today? Friday? I guess next week. And we have a big recess where all the members of Congress are going to go home and campaign and ask you for your support and money. And during that time, we're going to be putting pressure on all our elected representatives in the House and the Senate to ask them to vote for both support, restoration of money to United Nations UNRWA, and also to vote for this JRD, Joint Resolution of Disapproval. So that's on the horizon. That's what we're working on. And Peace Action, we're going to be sending out peace alerts real soon. And so most people that I talk to have never heard of a JRD, and it's pretty obscure, but you're going to hear a lot about it. And we got Bernie Sanders leading the charge. So that is happening. And then some of the feedback we got on that is that we're not holding our breath for a vote right this minute. They're going to go into recess, but when they come back, especially after the election, there's a better chance that this vote can pass. But we can put pressure on the Biden administration by letting them know that there's a lot of members of Congress who support this joint resolution disapproval and support restoring money to UNRWA. And by doing that, it helps push push our foreign policy forward. Anyway, so you're going to hear more in Action Alerts about that soon. So now we have the honor, so I'm going to call up Joe Burton, our board member and treasurer, and to make a presentation to Dr. Perlmutter. And Dr. Perlmutter would make some remarks. Joe? There he is.
Yes, come forward, thank you. We were so pleased that he was willing to come and talk to us. First time I heard about this, his work, I was amazed, to say the least. Incredible, actually. So Dr. Perlmutter, we're giving you this award for courageous action, giving surgical care to the children, women, and men of Gaza injured by Israeli bombings, and for continuing to speak out about the conditions you witnessed in Gaza.
Thanks. I'm really honored that you guys can, that you picked me for this, because what I did was to my family an act of stupidity, to my ex-girlfriend because she left me over this, an act of traitorism to our family. But in reality, I've gone to disaster areas my whole life. I was at ground zero on 9/11. I was at Haiti the day of the earthquake, Katrina the day of the earthquake, the tsunami the day after, Haiti 4 other times, and I've been to the murder capital of the world in St. Pedro Sula, Honduras, several times a year for the last decade, and Ecuador and everything for 20 years before then, sub-Saharan Africa, etc. But so traveling is something that I'd like to do, to go into disaster areas. But when you combine all of the things that I've seen, from putting pieces of bodies together on the Chelsea Center ice rinks to try to match one human being after 9/11, and doing the same thing after the earthquake in Haiti, which killed supposedly more people. I realized that in my first week in Gaza, I saw more devastation than all those other experiences combined. And that's largely because, and my calling to go there was because I felt guilty that my government was paying for the bombs that I knew were killing 50% of the population, which is high school kids and younger. It's the youngest population on the planet. And in polite disagreement to Joe, Vietnam, which I proudly burned my draft card for in '73, a year older than you, just I lost track of what I was going to say.
Contrary to what you said.
What's that?
Disagreement with Joe.
Yeah, teasing Joe. Yeah, so I lost track of what I was going to say, but the insulting Joe. The bottom line is the devastation that happened there was mostly because I knew that there was going to be children that were going to be the main focus, and that has always been the focus of my overseas surgical mission, working with our children. What I saw when I got there was, in fact, that level of devastation. I remembered what I was going to say. In polite disrespect to what Joe had said about the Vietnam War, the amount of bombs that we dropped on Gaza, which is smaller by 1/5 of the size of Nagasaki by itself, before I got there at the end of March, the amount of tonnage that we dropped exceeded that, not just of what we dropped on Nagasaki, which was bigger than the Gaza Strip, but it exceeded that and what we dropped on Hiroshima by the day I got there. And it has gone up about 22% since then. Not only has it gone up 22%, but the effectiveness has gone up, because now they're bombing tent cities instead of concrete buildings. And they're bombing caravans of people evacuating. And the drones selected iftar, the evening meal at the close of Ramadan, and I was there then. The drones would fly specifically and isolate where people were congregating, and that's where the bombs came. Because a non-discriminate American 2,000-pound bomb designed to go 20 feet underground and blow up bunkers in Afghanistan, when dropped onto a 3-story concrete building or dropped into a tent city, is infinitely more effective. And it was infinitely more effective. At any one time, 10 minutes after a bomb, we'd run to the ER, and predictably, the emergency room was probably twice the size of the stage of the last functioning hospital there, where we actually received patients, and it could hold 4 gurneys. My exam rooms in my office are bigger than that. And it would hold 4 gurneys. On each gurney was no less than 3 or 4 kids. A third were going to die. The third were dead. All were missing a limb or will be. And the things that we had to do to some of the kids, I would lose my medical license for in the United States. If you knew what we had to do to eliminate their pain. That being said, what we saw there was clear genocide. I went there thinking that Israel, a country of my Jewish heritage, was attacking Hamas. I was actually pretty dumb about ignorant is a more appropriate word, about what was going on between Israel and the Palestinian fight. I mean, I was sensitive to it, but I didn't know the history. I know it very well now. I know it didn't start on October 7th. I know the history of Gaza on October 6th and the 75 seasons before that show. Moreover, I went there believing the Zionistic bullshit that they're after the 23 to 35,000 Hamas combatants embedded within the Palestinians. And I went there believing that the Palestinians were hiding these people. That's what the world has told us. They deserve it because they're hiding them. And the AI program that Israel uses called Lavender says it's justifiable to kill 1,000 Palestinians to get a high-level Hamas operative, and several hundred justifiably killed as side effects, as innocents, but acceptable death of innocence if they can get a low-level Hamas combatant. And that is what Israel's testified to the ICJ. So says the ICJ lawyers who I've testified to. Make no mistake about it, the innocent Palestinian that's dying because of the American bombs, and we're supplying over 80% of them, the innocent Palestinian that's dying, most of which are children and women, are not the accidental side effect while chasing Hamas. They are indeed the target of those bombs, and Hamas is the excuse. Israel will freely admit that they've killed half of Hamas fighters. That leaves 1 in 30,000 Palestinians in the Strip, a Hamas fighter. And what I've said in every single TV show I've been on that gets cut from every single one is that in the United States, when a shooter goes into a high school and starts killing innocent kids, we send in a SWAT team, as does every other Western country. We send in a SWAT team to kill the shooter, right? Israel bombs the school. It's justifiable to level the school to 15 feet below ground because that's what these buildings look like. And that's okay. I went there to do hand surgery and general orthopedic surgery. My basic training is general orthopedics, and I specialize in hand and nerve repairs. And I know what gunshots are. I trained at the busiest trauma center in the United States during my hand fellowship. And I certainly see high-velocity bullet wounds in St. Pedro Sula, Honduras, where the cartel kills innocent people. But when you see children that are deliberately hit twice by a sniper bullet, it's hard to argue that they are not the deliberate target of that. When a building has nothing but women and children gathered for prayer and it gets bombed, and the drones can identify a collection of women and children quite easily, and to see that building leveled the next morning, that's significant. The hospital I was at was never bombed. A half mile away from us, there was the closest bombing. The concussion from that bomb on the 3rd floor of the nursing dormitory where we stayed threw me against the wall so hard I broke half a tooth and broke a finger. And that was just a concussion, and that bomb was a half mile away. So what does it do to a child with an undeveloped skeleton and the bones in its skull haven't been closed yet? What does it do to that child? Because the Lancet article is absolutely right that just came out. There is not 40,000 Palestinians that are dead. There's well over 250,000 that have died. And that is because we're not approaching our senators enough. I take this word as somebody who had the stupidity to go into a war zone. But I only fixed one person at a time, right? Those heroes are trying to fix more than that at a time. The only reason why I have the guts to get up here, which is out of my comfort wheelhouse, let alone in my office when CBS or CNN come with these big sticking lights and everything. That's pretty intimidating for me. It's not what I do. But I felt obligated to do it because the one thing that we found missing were journalists. There were no journalists there, and I was offended when the lady who covered for Christiana Amireh interviewed me and said, and I told him that I saw children that were shot twice, perfectly where I would put my stethoscope in, and perfectly on the side of the temple by the snipers that Netanyahu claims are the best, most moral snipers in the world. And she kept saying, well, CNN cannot independently confirm that. And I said, well, that should be your story, that you're not allowed in the country. Can you tell me the war that has ever existed where CNN or its equivalent, ABC, CBS, or NBC during our youth, was not allowed in a war zone? It's never happened. It's not happened in any other war there has been, other than special operations. And so the fact that the press was eliminated from it is just another way that Israel is doing to cover up the genocide that's going on. When we drove into Gaza, I was so proud that there were 2 lines of trucks, shoulder to shoulder, waiting to get in with us through the Rafah crossing. It was still open. I was there when the World Central Kitchen vans got blown up. The day after that, Chuck Schumer, the highest ranking Jew in our government, berated Netanyahu, and I was proud of him. But then I called his office and said, hey, listen, we are just as deconflicted as which is the digital process by which your phone lets Israel know, the IDF know that, because we already had to switch to Israeli SIM cards, they knew where I was at every one time. And if I went out of that area, then I could be targeted. So they well knew that those World Central Kitchen vans, each of which had 7 cell phones in it, they knew where they were at. Because the military GPS is accurate to within 4 inches. Ours is within 4 feet now. And so 7 phones really let them put their bombs right through their vans, right through the center of them quite perfectly. And we were scared because we were halfway through our trip, only a third of the way through our trip, and then I spoke to Schumer's secretary from Gaza, asking to please ensure the safety of us and all of our team, and he never got back to us. The American embassy in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, we have 2 embassies in Israel, they never got back to me. They sent me emails acknowledging they got my email, but never responded back. And so we were nervous from that time on that we were vulnerable. Too scared to walk by a window because there's always a drone or 10 over your head, and it's the ones you can't hear that scared us the most. There were drones that had machine guns hanging out from them, quadcopters that had 50 cal machine guns hanging below them, huge drones, and they would hover and look over us like it was an old sci-fi movie. And so the deliberate targeting was real. The deliberate bombing of innocent civilians is the goal of the IDF and the right-wing government of Israel, and the solution has to be to withhold funding. The day that the bombs get withheld from our government to Israel, is the day that the war stops. It simply won't. And the student protests had a huge impact. What happened right after the students started protesting? The 2,000-pound bombs got withheld, right? Now that self-proclaimed Zionist who I voted for then gave the equivalent of 500-pound bombs. We thought that would sneak under the radar, and it did. But the goal here is to fight the funding to senators, to let them realize that Zionism, which started in mid-1890s, 50 years before Israel was a country, is not the same Zionism that's taking place now. We're being taught that to be anti-Zionistic is the sine qua non of being anti-Semitic. And I can wear my father's menorah around my neck and my kafaya at the same time and not be contradictory. And in fact, they complement each other perfect. Golda Meir's passport said Palestine on it. So, well, thank you very much for recognizing the effect of speaking out does pay. Our testimony 2 weeks ago stopped the United Kingdom's delivery of bombs and weapons to Israel. And our group is going to speak to the German and French parliaments next to try to get some more dominoes to fall. And then hopefully, you know, after the election, I'm fairly confident that that there'll be changes after the election, at least greater recognition of what's going on in Gaza. I am voting for Harris. I don't agree that, I mean, in principle, I agree with your closing remarks, but a vote against Harris is a vote for Trump. And I grew up in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I've known him way before he was in politics. And I assure you that would be the worst of two evils. So I don't look at it as the lesser of two evils. It's still evil. The worst of two evils is horribly evil. And there is no chance that a third person can be elected. So I'm not going to waste my vote on a principle, so I feel good about it. I'm going to invest my vote truly on the lesser of two evils, because I think that it will at least recognize the plight of Gazans more readily, and Palestinians more readily than Trump ever could. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm honored. Thank you for the
Peter, if you want to come up to the front. I want to introduce Lauren Steiner for Lauren's very, 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 very generous support of this event tonight. Thank you, Lauren. And she's an activist, organizer, and independent journalist based in Asheville. She has fought against fracking, climate crisis education, privatization, and Trans-Pacific Partnership. I got the wrong glasses on. So, and working for net neutrality, clean energy, Medicare for all. She is busy, I can tell you. Racial and economic, environmental justice, Palestinian human rights. On her internet show, The Robust Opposition, she interviews organizers, activists, authors, and progressive elected officials and candidates. And you're going to see chapters of her Robust Opposition show on our website and Facebook for North Carolina Peace Action real soon. Okay, so thank you for joining us tonight, and here you go.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here, and especially to interview these two gentlemen who've really put their lives on the line, literally, for this cause. Just by way of background, the issues that Joe mentioned and are in the program, Palestinian human rights is not one of my core issues, but I like to say that every time Israel comes out and disproportionately responds to Hamas lobbing some ineffective rockets that are going to be intercepted by the Iron Dome, where the people get tremendous warning and they have underground bunkers to go into, and then Israel goes ballistic on them, literally, is when I used to come out. I lived in Los Angeles for 33 years, and for most of those years I was very apolitical when it came to Israel-Palestine. When I speak about this issue, I say that my grandfather was actually the first person approached by Henry Bernstein, who is the executive vice president of the United Jewish Appeal, back in 1947 to donate to relocate Jews from the Holocaust to Palestine. Wasn't even Israel then. And my grandfather, who had given 3,000 the year before, He was a dress manufacturer. He decided to give $50,000 in 1947, which was he wrote in his autobiography, it was 1/4 of his net worth, not even his profits, but 1/4 of his net worth, the equivalent of about $700,000 today. And he wrote in his autobiography that he wanted to become a millionaire so he could give more money to Israel. And over the next 5 decades, he and my father donated and raised for the UJA and for other, not the government, but for cultural institutions, museums, hospitals, schools, millions for Israel. But I can tell you that they would be turning in their graves if they could see what the right-wing, and I'll even say fascist government of Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. That David has become the Goliath. The oppressed have become the oppressor. And these are not my Jewish values, and I continue to wonder why, for what I call low-information Jews in this country, supporting Israel, right or wrong, has become their demonstration of being a good Jew. It just never ceases to amaze me. And I, like I said, was very agnostic until 2006, when I joined LA Jews for Peace and had my eyes open to the real history of Israel and Palestine. And by the time I started doing my show in 2016, after the Bernie campaign, I remember doing a protest at a Hillary Clinton fundraiser at Chaim Saban's house. Chaim Saban was the billionaire who came up with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and he said he was a single-issue guy and his issue was Israel. And he was always doing fundraisers. And I lived just adjacent to Beverly Hills, and as the national point person for all the actions against the Trans-Pacific Partnership and for net neutrality, I kind of had a little specialty of doing protests at Obama and Clinton fundraisers. So I knew where all these houses were, and we did one called Tell Hillary, Palestinian Human Rights Are Not for Sale. And then in 2018, I did a show when they had the Great March for Return in Gaza, and the Palestinians were going peacefully to the wall and getting sniped by Israel. Over 1,000 people died, many more were injured. And I did a show with Hind Kadari, and if any of you are on Twitter, now X, you might follow her. She's a Palestinian journalist who thankfully is still alive. She was 24 at the time, and my other guest was Ilan Glickman, who was a young member of the group If Not Now. I don't know if you guys have heard of that group, but it's a group of young Jews who are protesting the occupation. And he was also 24. And so she came to us live from Gaza. And I'll never forget doing this show at a certain time during the day, a special time, because she told me that was going to be the 4 hours that Israel was going to give them electricity. And when we did the show, she was in the darkness, held up, lit only by her camera phone light, because Israel did not, in fact, give them electricity at that time period. And she was saying that her country was destroyed then. I mean, and now we see what's happened since then. I also did a show with oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name right now. She's a human rights lawyer on the board of the National Lawyers Guild, and it was, is Israel guilty of war crimes? And this was back then, in 2018. And then this year, I've donated a lot to If Not Now, to Jewish Voice for Peace, to the Muslim Public Affairs Council. We had a billboard up in Asheville, a little Gazan girl looking straight at the camera and saying, "Why can't I live? No peace, no hope, just rubble." And that was up for about a month. And then I donated to U.S. Votes for Gaza, which, as you may know, they prevented actually from going into Gaza. They were bringing supplies. They were going to break the siege, but they wouldn't let them go in. And then I went to Washington to lobby Congress with Code Pink. And I went to Chicago to organize. Many of you probably didn't see it because the mainstream corporate media didn't cover it. But we had 3 brave delegates sneak in a banner that said, "Stop Arming Israel." and they unfurled it during Joe Biden's speech. And the reaction to that was 4 Democratic, and these were delegates. This was Nadia Ahmed, who was from Florida. She's not only a delegate for Harris, she was a DNC member. Liano Sharon from Michigan, Jewish, also a DNC member. And Issam Borea from Connecticut, who is an Egyptian immigrant who was jailed in an Israeli jail for the horrible crime of running against the military, leadership there. He was put in jail for 2 years. Had a little specialty of doing protests at Obama and Clinton fundraisers. So I knew where all these houses were, and we did one called Tell Hillary, Palestinian Human Rights Are Not for Sale. And then in 2018, I did a show when they had the Great March for Return in Gaza, and the Palestinians were going peacefully to the wall and getting sniped by Israel. Over 1,000 people died, many more were injured. And I did a show with Hind Kadari, and if any of you are on Twitter, now X, you might follow her. She's a Palestinian journalist who thankfully is still alive. She was 24 at the time, and my other guest was Ilan Glickman, who was a young member of the group If Not Now. I don't know if you guys have heard of that group, but it's a group of young Jews who are protesting the occupation. And he was also 24. And so she came to us live from Gaza. And I'll never forget doing this show at a certain time during the day, a special time, because she told me that was going to be the 4 hours that Israel was going to give them electricity. And when we did the show, she was in the darkness, held up, lit only by her camera phone light, because Israel did not, in fact, give them electricity at that time period. And she was saying that her country was destroyed then. And now we see what's happened since then. I also did a show with I'm forgetting her name right now. She's a human rights lawyer on the board of the National Lawyers Guild, and it was, is Israel guilty of war crimes? And this was back then in 2018. And then this year, I've donated a lot to If Not Now, to Jewish Voice for Peace, to the Muslim Public Affairs Council. We had a billboard up in Asheville, a little Gazan girl looking straight at the camera and saying, "Why can't I live? No peace, no hope, just rubble." And that was up for about a month. And then I donated to U.S. Votes for Gaza, which, as you may know, they prevented actually from going into Gaza. They were bringing supplies. They were going to break the siege, but they wouldn't let them go in. And then I went to Washington to lobby Congress with Code Pink. And I went to Chicago to organize. Many of you probably didn't see it because the mainstream corporate media didn't cover it. But we had 3 brave delegates sneak in a banner that said, "Stop harming Israel." And they unfurled it during Joe Biden's speech. And the reaction to that was 4 Democratic, and these were delegates. This was Nadia Ahmed, who was from Florida. She's not only a delegate for Harris, she was a DNC member. Liano Sharon from Michigan, Jewish, also a DNC member. And Issam Borea from Connecticut, who is an Egyptian immigrant who was jailed in an Israeli jail for the horrible crime of running against the military, leadership there. He was put in jail for 2 years. As soon as he got out, he found out that he was going to go back in, so he escaped to America, lived in DC, did some policy work as a professor now. And we were, all 3 of us were at the Palestinian Community Center earlier that day, and they had given us some Palestinian flags. Issam went to the delegates' welcome event in Chicago, and he didn't have a chance to go back to his room, and they were searching all backpacks. They racially profiled him, and they saw the Palestinian flags, and they gave him a really hard time and said he couldn't go in with them. So he had to destroy them, leave them behind. And then later that night, this happened. Not only did these 4 delegates from a labor union, Laborers International Union, I will name them, grabbed this flag. Well, first they handed out these "We Love Joe" sticks, and they all stood in front of that banner trying to block the Stop Arming Israel sign. And then they turned out the lights in the Florida delegation. Then these delegates tried to grab the banner, and they grabbed it back. And then the second time they grabbed, they succeeded it. One of them reached over 2 rows ahead and hit the woman. This is Nadia Ahmed, a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, 3 times over the head with a "We Love Joe" stick. So you can imagine, and this is the party that professes to be supporting democracy over fascism, and they wouldn't even allow these people to express their, in their vain attempt after, 10 months to try to stop a genocide, And then the same thing happened in Nashville 2 nights ago. I figured, okay, this worked out so well, we're going to do it. Tim Waltz is coming to Asheville. We had 24 hours to organize this. I got 4 young members of Jewish Voice for Peace to do it. It was raining that day. I was going to do it, but I figured, let the young people do it. Let them stand out in the rain for literally 3.5 hours before they got to do this. And then when Waltz started speaking, like clockwork, and this was not planned, they started chanting. One sign said, "Stop Arming Israel." The other side said, "Genocide equals no votes." And then they started chanting, "Ceasefire now, ceasefire now." It lasted for all of 45 seconds. But in this video that went viral on my Twitter channel, 47,000 views in 2 days, you see these Democrats in the audience come across and proudly place their body, and they're holding up the Harris Waltz sign, completely blocking this banner. Again, the party of democracy versus the party of fascism, denying these people their First Amendment rights to protest a genocide. So, I'm with this one. I cannot vote for Kamala Harris, in addition to being a California resident for 33 years. She had a terrible racial justice record, which I will not get into. But I said when I was interviewed on the Katie Halper show, I said, look, this is not just an issue. This is a moral imperative. Imagine you were alive in 1944 and you knew that not only did FDR know about the Holocaust and do nothing, but he actually sent the ovens to the Nazis. Could you vote for him? So that's what they're doing. They're sending the ovens to the Nazis right now, and I cannot vote for them. I will be voting for Jill Stein, who is, she is one of the 3 anti-genocide candidates that actually has a chance. She actually is on the state where she can get 479, I was told tonight by her campaign manager, electoral votes.
517.
Oh, 517 now?
So she's throwing your vote away.
Well, we're not going to discuss this. I'm here to interview these guys because, like I said, they were really brave. I have not put myself in harm's way in the way that they did. And, Mark, you talked a lot about what you did over there, but you didn't tell the stories of the kids. And when I read his article in Politico, first of all, I was blown away that they would even publish it. This is a pretty establishment publication, and it is actually read by practically everybody on the Hill. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, before I ask you to get into some of the stories, this read like you could be a professor, a literature professor, a writing professor. Writing was so beautiful, it was so descriptive, it was so persuasive, it was so personal. I would like to know how it came about that you got your article published in there, and what were the repercussions? Did members of Congress call you to meet with them personally or to testify in front of their committees?
Almost every congressman refused to meet with us. One of the fellows that we went to DC with was Dr. Adam Hamaway, who 13 years earlier, while he's Egyptian, married to a Palestinian, 13 years earlier, he was, as a plastic surgeon in Iraq, or Afghanistan, I forget which one, was asked to fly out to a helicopter crash, and because all the other medevac helicopters were out, and so he jumped on the helicopter and then tied off the bleeding femoral arteries of the helicopter pilot, and then flew her back to the field hospital and amputated both of her legs. And when we went to DC, that same helicopter pilot, Tammy Duckworth, refused to meet with us, even with the gentleman who saved her life. My local congressman refused to meet with me, even though his number one aide is my patient, and she rearranged it ahead of time in Tarboro. So nobody willingly met with us. We pointed out the contradiction with the AIPAC signs that are outside of every one of the doors, with the blending of the American flag and the Star of David. You've probably seen them. And right next to that is We Stand With Ukraine, and they failed to refuse to talk to us about the contradiction with how we can support a fascist government attacking innocent people in Ukraine, but for some reason we're ignoring a fascist government attacking innocent people in the Gaza Strip. So we basically got no speaking to Congressman. We met with some sympathetic members, but our goal was to meet with people who didn't agree with us, and otherwise it was just a waste of time, and it turned out to be a waste of time.
But I'm wondering about the political article. How did that come about?
We sent letters to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Citizen Chronicle, and 10,000 other newspapers, and the articles were written while we're in Gaza, recognizing that that it was going to be our voice, and we got a sympathetic ear. New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, they 100% rejected our letters. New York Times would not publish the word genocide. JAMA, the #1 medical journal in the United States, wouldn't publish our articles about the effect of war on children. The effect of the influence or the fear of being labeled anti-Semitic is huge in this country. Indeed, we started running medical school classes while we were at the European Gaza Hospital, and that the war really filtered out the leaders of the medical school class. They migrated to every remaining hospital to serve. And so we found a collection of 6 or 10 medical students that left their families behind just to work in the hospitals because there were no other doctors. And there was only one Palestinian doctor left at the hospital. And his wife had her legs blown off, and so he was taking care of her. He was an orthopedic surgeon, and rarely was able to provide to us help, but the medical students were widely available. And so we tried to get them seats in American medical schools when we got back. We sent letters to 220 medical schools in the United States, Canada, the Caribbean, and Mexico. 6 responded. 6 gave us an affirmative. Guess what the deans of admission had in common for all 6? All 6 were Jewish. Right? Right.
Again, my
They
question.
should have been more empowered and supported.
Well, but UC Berkeley says, I will take 2 and give them full ticket rides under one condition. You give me 2 Jewish students. Right? Because the political pushback is huge. And so we were talking over at the table about what change is going to happen, and it's not going to happen in your and my lifetime. Yeah. It's going to happen in his. And I jokingly asked, do you want a checkers answer or a chess answer? Well, there is no checkers answer, right? there's got to be a long play to make a definitive change, and you have to start planning for that definitive change now. And it's a panacea if we think that this problem is going to solve in our lifetime. What we really have to do is work on our government's funding protocols, whether it's term limits or who could donate to what amount of money a PAC could donate to a congressman, or more importantly, limiting how much money they could spend on their campaigns. If you can get $20 million, but if you can only spend $200 million, but if you can only spend 20, then
First, you have to elect someone who will listen to you.
well, that's why it's a generational change, right? That's why it's not going to happen in your lifetime. You're an old fart like me. It's not going to happen, right? But it's going to happen because of them, right? Look at civil rights changes, for suffrage and for the black vote, which is because blacks were allowed to vote, 80 years ago, doesn't mean that prejudice stopped right then. So these are processes, and a process has to begin someplace before it comes close to an end. But we're not playing chess, we're playing checkers.
Well, I agree, and I think that's why the young people that's the only hope that I find, because only one thing that you said, aside from voting for Kamala, that I disagreed with you on was that it's not the Zionism of the original Zionism. What I've come to learn over the past year is Zionism was always a settler colonial project. And maybe the initial Zionists were secular, maybe some of them were even socialist, but they still went over there, despite what we were all told about a land without people for a people without a land, and ran off 750,000 Palestinians. And I think what young people understand when they look at it through this lens is how connected it is to all their other movements of oppression that they are fighting. And I want to shift to you now because, despite the fact that the narrative in the mainstream corporate media was that these encampments were unsafe for Jewish students, we all know that half the organizers were Jewish. So can you talk a little bit about the impetus for organizing the encampment, who all was involved in it, and what your initial demands were?
Yeah. Yes. To your specifically to your first point, of the 38 students that got suspended and arrested during the encampment, I personally know, have a relationship with 11 of them. And I think 4 of those 11 were Jewish students. Today, one of them remains suspended because UNCU continues to target him. His name is Caleb White. And UNC decided that they don't understand the structure of SJP, and they decided that he was the leader, even though he's not. He's one of, it's a very flat structured organization. And someone in administration probably has a personal vendetta against him, and he's Jewish. And he remains suspended today. They did not, UNC seems to have offered deals to all students, including the counter-protester frat bros who were beating down the students on camera, as you all have seen. They've offered everyone a deal except him because they perceive him to be a leader and someone clearly in administration has a vendetta against him. We see, Jewish organizations on campus like Hillel, they're not out there trying to protect him or advocate for him because fundamentally, Hillel is a Zionist organization. It's not there to protect Jewish students. And I think that is becoming more and more obvious now. You see that, they're trying to frame it, it's like Jewish students feel unsafe. It's not, it's just Zionist students feel uncomfortable because their politics, it's like they're being compared to fascists. And that's not what they perceive themselves as, even though that's what they are. That's what Zionism is, fundamentally. Creating an ethno-state for a specific ethnic group is fascism. And I think that's what's becoming challenging is that, we think about this and there is this disconnect and people are uncomfortable with that, but that needs to happen. In terms of the impetus of the encampment specifically, I had a lot of deadlines right until then. I was very behind. I did
I wasn't too involved
for
in
a
the
major
planning.
paper.
I was there the first day. I was there every day.
So I was very behind.
So I wasn't too involved
Involved
in
in the planning, I was
there
not
the first
very
day. I was
conducive
there every
usually
day.
to research work. Trying to do work next to a tent, which is not very conducive usually to research work. To train UNC-PD on how to fight anti-Semitism, which is just code for oppressed students, like we've seen, the IOF train police departments across the country. So we know that's happening behind the scenes. And so if you know someone who has connections, if you know someone who can have influence, please let us know. We would love to actually work with them.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do. Somebody used the term cognitive. Somebody used the term cognitive dissonance earlier on. I can't remember who, but yeah, I feel that all the time because I think about this. To me, it's clearly a genocide. As a Jewish person, to me, it seems oddly reminiscent of the 1940s Holocaust, except it's open air. But my question is, because, when we invaded Iraq, that was for their mineral wealth, their natural resources. Is that what this is about? Because why would people be permitting this? I heard there's trillions of gallons of offshore gas off Gaza. The BP already has a contract for it. Somebody mentioned to me once, and I never heard anyone else say it, that they're thinking of building another canal because a ship got stuck in the Suez about a year or so ago. And they want to displace the Palestinians, clean the area, and build another canal. So there's got to be economic reasons for this. Why would this be happening? Why is the U.S. supporting it? The U.S. will do anything to get their fossil fuels. Iraq, for instance, is what we did there, 300,000 dead. So I'm thinking there's got to be a reason for this other than just, outright brutality, which, most of us see, many of us, some people don't. But that's what I wonder. Why is this happening? That's what I have to say.
That's the answer. I honestly, Palestine is not a resource-rich country. It's not really about resources. I think a big part of it. Yeah, but the amount of it pales in comparison to a lot of other offshore gas resources. So I don't think the resource and those were discovered somewhat recently. So I doubt that that's an economic. I think someone I can't remember who, but someone described Israel as a large aircraft carrier for the U.S. So it's really about U.S. military hegemony in the Middle East. I think that's a big one. And I think what settler colonialism when Israel was established, it was the norm for Europeans to have colonialism. That was the norm at the time, and a lot of Jewish, it was happening mostly in the UK, but a lot of Jewish aristocrats felt like they can take part of the pie, and that's how Zionism came about. There was obviously issues with emancipation and especially in Russia, anti-Semitism was rampant, and other parts of Europe. But fundamentally, it was the norm to have settler colonialism, and then those relations have been entrenched, from Balfour in 1918 to today. There's just a lot of rich Zionists who have a lot of influence.
Can I make a comment also? And Lauren probably knows this, after doing all the fracking throughout the United States is the largest producer of oil in the world. More than Saudi Arabia.
Obama quadrupled.
Right, but just be aware, so in reference to us stealing oil and stuff, we have it, we have it. And also, just a thought that, of course, we're all trying to figure this out. I've been trying to figure it out all my life, warfare and what causes it. So you're asking what causes it, but I think that the question we really have to be focused on is what can we do to stop America support? Okay, that's where we have our focus. What can we do to stop America's support of this? And Biden has power to stop it. Okay, we have to make it happen.
Well, I just had a thought, you talk about contacting, if you're an alumni, I think everybody who went to college can contact their own school and say, we want you to know that we support the encampment, we support divestment, we support you speaking out on behalf of enforcing U.S. laws in whatever venue you can. I mean, that's something we can do, and also contacting our representatives. I mean, I've got, my guy is useless. When I was lobbying with Code Pink, I said, I'm going to go, I see Chuck Edwards' office is down the hall, I'm going to go over there. And Jody and Medea said to me, oh, don't bother with him. You're never going to get him. And I said, but he's my representative. I feel like I need to do it. So I bent the ear of the staffer who was, sitting at the front desk. Her name was Lauren. And I just said, let me just tell you something. As a Jewish person, and I bent her ear for, about 15 minutes. And, but then it occurred to me, and this is something that people should understand too, that white evangelical Christians are probably more supportive of Israel numerically than Jews in this country, because they believe that the rapture, in order for Christ to return, all Jews have to go to Israel, renounce, accept Jesus Christ as their Savior, or be annihilated. So it's a very cynical thing for Jewish Congress members to make common cause with these people, because they are some of the biggest anti-Semites that are out there, even though they support Israel.
In terms of dollars, 2.7 times more money is given to Jewish causes by the white evangelicals than by the AIPAC.
We've done a lot tonight, and can we have recognize 2 more questions? And I'm going to ask my 2 guests to pick somebody that they can ask a question, and then we have the Raging Grannies who are going to be able to send us off. So, Doctor, would you like to pick somebody out?
Yeah. You just made a great argument for the utility of compromise voting, of strategically compromise. You just made. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You just gave an example of American right-wingers using strategically compromised voting effectively, which is Jews forming an alliance with anti-Semites in order to promote policies that they favor. Strategically compromised voting is an absolute necessity in our system of government. And a lot of leftists here haven't realized it, but leftist organizations have been part of European politics since 1848. And since World War II, even though with parliamentary systems they don't have to strategically compromise their voting, very often situations arise where they must, and they do. The unions and minor parties promote strategically compromised voting in the lesser evil, in order to advance policies that they support. And I think that's a divisive issue here. I'll give up this one.
That's exactly what evangelicals have done by supporting Trump. Their policy was just to get anti-abortion, rule makers and judges in, and they were willing to forgive every egregious act of ethics that he's ever committed in order to do that. Adultery, not a problem, and that's the premises of almost every parliamentary system, right? You have to compromise to get the government that you want.
Hashem, you want to pick somebody?
Can I add just a answer?
Sure, of course.
When I characterized my remarks, it wasn't like, yes, I made a kind of a very grand statement, lesser, some evils are too evil. But really my argument is pragmatic. If Mark could convince me that, right after the election, Kamala Harris is suspending aid, weapons sales to Israel, I'd say go for it, vote for her. But the difference is that Trump is promising, abortion to the evangelicals, therefore they're willing to step aside. But Kamala is not promising anything that we want her to do, and that's a fundamental difference.
But I also think there's a strategic issue here, which is that if in 4 years from today, so if they know that a genocide is not something that's going to keep us away from voting for them, that means they'll do anything and we're going to vote for them no matter what. We have to stand our ground. The reality is that at some point we have to stand our ground and say that there are lines that we're not willing to cross, and that will hopefully make change within the party 4 years from now. But the reality is that if we let them, do what they did for the last 11 months, and we're still gonna show up and vote for them, then we have no control. Then they're completely controlled by AIPAC, and we have no voice. And if you want to give up your voice, feel free to do it. But I don't think you should.
But I don't think it's giving up your voice. I think it's measuring your voice. So if Jill Stein, let me give you the controversy. If Jill Stein got enough votes where she showed up to get equal funding, because that's the key here, right? And she looks like she could have traction, I could understand that. But functionally, the way we vet our candidates, and you're not old enough to remember the way that the conventions used to be, where we'd actually pick the vice president usually was the second runner-up, right? Not just because he's from the Rust Belt, I need more votes for the Rust Belt. LBJ was picked as the vice president because he had the second highest number of delegates, and that mattered, right? That he and Nixon couldn't stand each other. The truth of it is, in my viewpoint, and maybe it's because I'm older, I think that I'm, contrary to you, throwing my vote away unless I know that Jill Stein will get enough traction to actually show up on a ballot where it would make a difference. Do I like everything that Kamala Harris does or her history? No. I don't like anything about every candidate, and I would challenge that anybody in this room probably doesn't have a candidate in their life's experience that represented every one of their interests, right? It is a compromise. But my number one charge in my vote is, in fact, Palestine. And so as I measure that, I look at as which one is the most likely not to enact necessarily change, because I already told you it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Which one is going to allow the groundswell to change, to enable that change 25, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And that's not, I would argue that you're throwing your vote away because you're not allowing that metamorphosis to take place. That you have to create an environment, because playing checkers is, okay, I'm going to sacrifice my king, right? So I can win the game, even if I lose. Playing chess is how you have to win this game.
So I gotta give you the rebuttal. I have to. Wait, I just have.
I give that rebuttal to 16 kids. Half of them are Palestinian and Gaza that have lost family members. Their whole family's annihilated. They were there for when President Kamala Harris became a VP. We were Girl Scout. We were proud. Okay, women president. And I had to look them in the eye. Why I made them vote for someone who's killing their family members? How do you look at girls in the eyes every day that have lost families, that have been traumatized? I have girls that are from Yemen, that are from Lebanon. It is not a one-country issue. It's happening everywhere. How do you work with these girls, with these families, and you tell them that, lesser of two evils, let's vote for that. Like, they are traumatized.
Wait a minute,
How can
Rhonda.
I ethically tell anyone what to do? Like, we will not see change. I never thought, I grew up in New York City, grew up in the 80s. I never thought we would have these conversations, have a room full of so many people listening, talking about Palestine, not being afraid. I do see that change, and I pray we see this change soon, because literally Palestinians
But
will be
that's,
extinct.
with all due respect to you, that's the point that I'm making. Because 15 years ago, you would never be in a room full of a couple of Jews talking about how we can solve this problem because you wouldn't be invited.
Yeah, but Kamala's not doing any fighting. If you remember, when mask off, when she...
Please. Could we please, this is an important conversation, lots of good discussions, but could we please have the Reg and Granny sing and then break into, people can continue talking until they kick us out. But if you're losing people and...
Right, can I ask the guests to get a concluded statement, you know, and if there's anything you didn't cover, and then we're going to have the Grannies end our night tonight.
Okay, my concluding statement is a rebuttal to just say that we don't have space. This is what Angela Davis said, even though she acknowledges that Kamala's not going to do anything. She says, at least we'll have the space to make change. We don't have space because what happens is when a Democrat is in power, the rest of them go to sleep. And we have all the policies that were done under Clinton and under Obama that led to Trump, okay? The neoliberal policies that were enacted by Democrats that the Democrats didn't protest. At least when we have a Republican, we have an active Democratic resistance. And not only that, and the final thing is the mask, when she's not reading from a teleprompter or a memorized script, what she said to people who lost family members was, if you want to vote for Trump, just say so, but I'm speaking. And she glared at them. So that's the true Kamala Harris.
Okay. Hashem, do you have a concluding statement you'd like to make? And then Dr.?
I'm just going to read someone gave me the full quote that I mentioned earlier. This was from former Secretary of State and U.S. Army General Alexander Haig's observation 35 years ago. It still resonates today. Quote, Israel is the largest American aircraft carrier in the world that cannot be sunk, does not carry one American soldier, and is located in a critical region for American national security. So I think that highlights one of the three pillars of why the U.S. is so heavily invested in Israel. I'll leave it at that.
Doctor?
I think the ultimate way to make change is not through your vote for president, but how hard you lean on your state legislatures and federal legislatures. You can expose how vulnerable they are to evangelical Christian donations and to AIPAC donations. Expose it. And I think that's the ultimate way to win this game. It's not through who we're going to pick for president. And we have aircraft carriers. One's called Taiwan, one's called Diego Garcia. There's aircraft carriers all over the world that have the United States that they support that are unsinkable. The war strategy aside, we need to only effect change by going through our lawmakers. If we can't get our lawmakers to change their attitudes towards Zionism, then we're not going to make any difference at all. Our presidents come and go, our lawmakers stay for their whole goddamn lives.
Right. Well,
stay in the streets.
So I want to hold on 1 second. I want to thank our very intelligent guests tonight. I want to thank our very intelligent audience for showing up tonight and being such passionate activists. And the Grannies are up on deck to sing. Okay?
We can vote for anybody we want to, but unless we're out in the streets, disrupting business as usual, and making sure that we do make a difference, then the rest is moot. I'm sorry, but it's been a long night, and I have to give a shout out to the young people, because you are our hope. Kamala Harris is not our hope. You are our hope, and we stand with you. You may know that the Raging Grannies have been around for a long time. We write our own lyrics to bring our message. We are not a performing group. We are not singers, but we have a message for you today. Do we have some mics spread around? So we have two songs for you. We shortened one of them because we know the night is long, so we we crossed out a verse or two, but here we go. Oh, by the way, you might have heard us sing this melody before, but we recycle all our music, so it's in that spirit that we come to you again. We're the raging grannies, and we want you all to know that war is not the way to peace, and we must all say no. We've seen it time and time again, war's not the way to go. We rage to end all war. We didn't raise our children to kill other mothers' sons, but in Gaza now our bombs and drones are killing everyone. As they die beneath the rubble, tell us just what have we won. We rage to end all war. No more wars upon this planet. War's a crime and it's a racket. So join us as we sing out loud and sing with all your heart. It's time to end all war. They're spending our tax dollars, but we don't believe their lies, 'cause we see the genocide unfolding right before our eyes. Now some other mothers bid their children tearful last goodbyes. We rage to end all war. Our country's on the wrong side of history every time, bombing all the poor folks while the fat cats whine and dine, and abetting other nations in their merciless war crimes. So we rage to end all war. No more wars upon this planet. War's a crime and it's a racket. So join us as we sing out loud and sing with all your heart. It's time to end all war. The lessons of our dirty wars are lost on them, it seems. They can't just go on killing folks, their children and their dreams. How many more must die to carry out their bloody schemes? We rage to end all war. No more wars upon this planet. War's a crime and it's a racket. So join us as we sing out loud and sing with all your heart. It's time to end all wars. This is, after all, a peace action dinner, and we all know that war solves nothing. It is stupid, and as one of our fellow members in Veterans for Peace said, our government belongs in a straitjacket. It's insane what we are doing, and it's no wonder that we feel such distress. But we have our young people to look to, our doctors, our activists of any age. we're going to leave you with one last song, and it's a short one. Sorry, but with wars going on, we don't have time for rehearsal and memories, so we use these. We weep for the mothers of Gaza, and we ask for your forgiveness. For our tax dollars, supply the missiles that kill your children and burn your cities. We weep for the fathers of Gaza. defending your ancient homeland, your children starving, ancestral homes gone, and still you struggle to keep your birthright. We weep for the Gaza's children. The blue skies rain terror upon you. There's no safe haven, no place to run to. Your parents taken by brutal forces. But one day the world will awaken to your fight for your liberation, and those who profit from all you've suffered will be brought to justice, and peace will blossom. So we'll fight for liberation, and we shall not be moved. We'll fight for liberation, and we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. Gaza shall be free. Sing it with us, come on now. We'll fight for liberation, and we shall not be moved. We'll fight for liberation, and we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. Gaza shall be free.